California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. You know, it's an age-old question. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's perplexing, it's mind-boggling, it's downright frustrating. But if there's one place in the entire world you can visit to help answer that question, it's Petaluma, California. Welcome to Petaluma's annual Butter and Eggs Day Parade, which celebrates the chicken. And in this parade, they come in all shapes and sizes. It's a girl.
It's a girl chick, yeah.
Now, how did
born this morning. She just hatched in time for the parade.
Yeah, look, there's the egg
there's
right
the egg,
here.
Yeah, just cracked open.
Look at this little chick. Look at her feet.
Are those great?
What's the deal here?
This is Zoe.
Uh-huh.
This is her first Butter and Egg Day Parade.
Oh, we got two little chicks.
We have two little chicks, Eli and Joshua Berg, and they're twins.
Oh,
double yolks.
Really? Double yolks. Look at this outfit here.
Isn't it pretty? Can you say peep peep, Taylor? Peep.
Oh, these are chickens. Well, by now you get the idea. Petaluma is chicken crazy. In fact, they've been having this parade for years, starting back in the 1920s, with some very imaginative floats. But why Petaluma? Just what is the historic connection between this pleasant little California community and the chicken? Well, to find out the answer to that question, we visited the Petaluma Historic Museum. Okay, here we are inside the museum, and a beautiful museum it is. It's an old Carnegie Library, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And this is probably the only museum in California, maybe even the world, whose first floor is almost exclusively given over to exhibits about eggs and chickens. Is this the Egg Museum or the Petaluma Museum?
It's the Petaluma Historical Museum and Library. And the reason we have so many exhibits that have to do with eggs and poultry is because our early agricultural development is what really created the town that you know today. And we couldn't really talk about our heritage without talking about the egg industry and the poultry industry that gave rise to many of our buildings and wonderful homes.
Eggs and chickens. And when you talk about chickens and eggs, this is probably the most important exhibit in the museum, isn't it? This little wooden box.
This little box is called an incubator. And Mr. Lyman C. Bice, who was the gentleman who patented the first practical incubator, called it a fine piece of furniture. And you'll notice the wonderful beadboard that was used here. What happened is a heat source was attached to the unit. There was a thermostat, which kept it at 103 degrees, just like the mother hen would, so that she would be free to lay time and time again, which then obviously increased the production of the eggs. But by putting them in the incubator and opening the doors on a regular basis, pulling it down, taking the eggs in the tray, turning them just like the mother hen would turn them for the specified amount of days, you would then end up with a passel of baby chicks, but the mother hen has kept laying and laying and laying, so that obviously the production of those eggs increases triple folds, quadruple folds, so that you're actually you're into an industry rather than just an egg ranch.
And this was invented here in Petaluma.
Incubators had been tried, but Bice is the one who put the practicability into it, and he also got the patent for it. Then, once he had the patent though, then he went into production. So the production of these took place on what used to be known as Main Street, the north end of town, and the local ranchers obviously purchased this first, so we got a leg up, you know, a white leghorn up on the rest of the world, and the chicken industry just basically took off.
Here in Petaluma.
Here in Petaluma. We have this wonderful area where we have the breeze, we have mild climates, great soil, and the poultry industry was here, but this definitely gave it a real push into being an industry.
And his name again?
Lyman C. Bice.
Lyman C. Bice. Now that's a name that's not very well known among average circles, but in the chicken industry, and I'm
yes.
sure here in Petaluma, Mr. Bice is very well known.
Oh, definitely.
All right, now we have a whole big, here's a chicken right here, and I'm sure there's some history behind this chicken too.
This chicken, or this rooster, I should say, you notice his overalls, sat on the counter of probably the world's only chicken pharmacy. It was down on the corner of Washington and Main Street. It was a business devoted specifically to the ills and ails of the poultry industry, not just chickens, but also turkeys, because they were raised here in Petaluma also. They had all kinds of pills and powders and whatever, and let's don't talk about chicken diseases, okay? Do know that chickens are subject to human diseases, so even if you were to find a local chicken industry nowadays, they would not let you interact with the chickens, because if you had a cold, their chickens could possibly catch that and become ill.
But here in Petaluma,
we had the way to make them well.
Your own chicken
There
pharmacy.
was also a chicken gazette, which was a newspaper, you know, the call of the hen, that was printed so that it could be distributed throughout the poultry industry all across the United States, letting everyone know what the new developments were, what new theories were. It was just, we were the egg basket of the world.
Now here it is, the Whirlway egg cleaner. This is an example of an early egg cleaner. You have, oh, wait a minute. Now, there you go. Is your flock troubled with neck molts, low production, small eggs, soft-shelled eggs, frequent colds, low hatchability, or false molts? Boy, they had a cure for everything, didn't they?
Unfortunately, yes. Yes, the egg washer this one was actually developed by a gentleman who lived here in Petaluma. Its whole process is to wash the eggs off with clean water and to dry them off on a towel, and then they would be sorted by size, put into their containers, and obviously shipped to market. This is a large feeder. The grain would have come here, the chickens would have come to the edge and chipped away at their food. We had a number of the industry hatched so many other industries because obviously the grain industry came from needing to feed the chickens and cows here, so it developed and eventually immigrated into or evolved into not only bovine and chicken feed, but also dog, cat, you know.
So the feed industry grew off the chicken industry. That's like saying what came first, the chicken or the feed?
And we don't need to do that one, okay?
Now you've got a whole exhibit here of, what are these things in here? Look at this, Louie. This is
an
amazing.
egg scale. This was very important. You know how you buy your eggs and you have a different grade?
Yeah.
Well, it's the size and the weight of that egg that decide that particular grade.
Oh, wow.
So a person, an individual at that time, would sit and individually weigh those. Here we've got like 4 separate kinds here. They would take those eggs from that flock. They would clean them, they would weigh them and sort them and put them in the egg cartons.
Now I'm just seeing, here's another one of your incubators over here.
Yes.
So you've got
and right here it says in plain Petaluma Incubator.
Yeah.
Standard of the world. He was very proud of these as a piece of furniture and as the way that they actually, you know, did such a groundswell for the poultry industry.
Look at this, hand-carved rosewood rooster.
This was donated by a local citizen.
So I guess back then, art revolved around the chicken industry too, didn't it? Well, we've learned the name Bice, the man who invented the incubator. But there's another name connected with the poultry industry, with the egg industry here in Petaluma. And this guy really made a difference, didn't he?
You're talking about Bert Kerrigan. And actually, Bert Kerrigan is the one who put Petaluma on the map as the world's egg basket. It was his brainchild. He was hired by the Chamber of Commerce in the spring of 1918. He came to town. He said, well, why would you want to bring something new here when you've got something that's so wonderful? And he, I guess the right word is exploited what we already had. He took the egg industry and made it, well, he made it a national holiday and the National Egg Day. He created the Egg Day Parade. He created the Egg Queen, the Slick Chicks, the Egg Day Ball, where I say the local hens and roosters strutted their stuff. And
so he was a real marketing...
Oh, marketing wizard. If there was a way to get a photo opportunity out of a chicken laying X amount of eggs, or so many eggs going down the river in their crates, or a chicken doing something wonderful, he was right there with a camera, a script, a photographer.
Really?
And it was the old movie tones that you saw. There were a lot of shorts that were done on the poultry industry. There wasn't a way that you could miss that that Petaluma was the world's egg basket.
Now, he came up with that slogan.
Yes, he did.
Petaluma, the world's egg basket. And there was a monument in town.
Well, there were several statues that gave you the idea that this was the world's egg basket. One was a large basket full of eggs. One was a huge egg sitting on a pedestal. The other two that eventually came around were the plaster chickens on chicken wire at each end of town that welcomed you to town. The world's egg basket and the chickens were there. Unfortunately, they went the way of most things, especially the one that was blown up because Petaluma and Santa Rosa had a football rivalry, and we would paint their panther purple, they would paint our chicken orange, and then finally they just got tired of painting and blew it up. So,
and here's an example. Look at this. Now,
this
here's
is a wonderful egg queen in her wonderful feathered costume in her court of slick chicks.
Now, what is this slick chick thing? Because I've seen other pictures of women dressed in
poultry costuming or
Yeah.
farm costuming. Well, let's face it, what advertises nowadays? Pretty girls.
Yeah.
So the slick chicks was Bert Kerrigan's way of saying, look at what eggs can do for you. They can give you great hair, great bodies, and make you smile a lot.
And here's an example of, well, here it says, highest record made by 10 hens in 364 days. So he gave out awards for the highest number of eggs laid in a chicken house.
If he could find a way to promote something, he would. This was how many 10 chickens laying how many eggs in a year, okay? Or one chicken laying how many eggs in a month. A particular ranch, maybe how many eggs are laid there in one day. How many eggs were crated and packed down the river in one day. If there was a way that this man could make it front page news, it was done. And it paid off.
And what was the fascination the country had with eggs? Or was it just that he could have probably taken any subject and promoted it like that? He just happened to be hired by the city of Petaluma, brought in here and asked to promote eggs.
He was asked to put Petaluma on the map, to find a way to bring something in here that would make Petaluma famous. And he said, you already have it, make the most out of it, and this is how we're going to do it. He was a marketing genius. What better thing to do for a community than to take its foremost industry or its foremost money-making product and turn it into something that's fun?
Now, Debbie, Bert Kerrigan came to Petaluma in 1918, but the egg industry had been going strong for decades before that, and part of the reason for its success was its geographic location.
We were perfect, absolutely perfect. The poultry industry flourished here because of our climate. We have temperatures that don't stay in the freezing, or they don't stay in the very, very hot range. We're very moderate. We are in what's known as the Petaluma Draw, which is a geographical feature that takes the cool air from the Bodega Bay, puts it right down the waterway into San Francisco Bay. We don't have an excessive amount of rain, but we have enough so that the grain industry was growing. Individual ranchers came here to begin with, and then it just grew and grew and grew with their ability to produce more eggs, to produce more chickens, and so everything just kind of piggybacked after Bice's invention. But it was Kerrigan that came here, saw what we had, and blew it into something magnificent.
But chickens initially liked Petaluma weather. This is good chicken weather here.
Yes. And the land was, the original ranches all had what was known as free-range chicken. You hear that word a lot on television ads. A free-range chicken is a chicken that is allowed to eat and grow on the surface. Unfortunately, when they do their business on the ground, there's a chance for a bacteria to grow. That's when they started with the chicken coops and doing more wire containering and keeping them up off that ground. And the industry grew with the amount of flocks that grew. But because our climate, because of the natural air conditioning that we have here, the abundance of the grain, and our location, the absolute, mecca of real estate.
And here it is right here. For those of us who wouldn't know, we would just think this was part of the Petaluma River up here. But this little part right here is called what?
It's called the Turning Basin. It was actually dug out in 1921. The river was originally 32 miles of slow bending curves, kind of meandering. It is now just 16 miles of waterway. Originally known as the Estero-Olompoli, then became the Petaluma Creek for a number of years, and then in June 16th, 1959, President Eisenhower signed an act of Congress creating the Petaluma River. But it was this waterway that allowed those poultry producers to take their eggs and their baby chicks, put them on the waterway, and take them down to San Francisco and points from there.
Ah, and this is where they would load them up, right here.
There are
at this
warehouses
turning point.
all along the waterway where they would back their dray rigs, take those crates off, put them onto the the scows, the schooners, the steamers, pile them high with their produce, and take it on down to San Francisco.
Where you could have fresh eggs.
Definitely, because less than 4 hours worth of travel down the river, you were in San Francisco.
They didn't break because they weren't going on the road.
That's correct.
They were going on the nice smooth river.
That's right.
And the idea of fresh eggs was, I mean, that was a real selling point too, because in the past that hadn't been possible.
No, because to get a fresh egg, you had to have a hen residing on your property to pick those eggs up every morning. But to have large quantities of basically fresh produce and fresh eggs delivered to you, so that you could tout that at your restaurant or your hotel, saying we have fresh Petaluma eggs every morning. What a great way to advertise your business.
So there were a lot of Petaluma eggs being eaten in San Francisco.
We were their #1 supplier.
Now, Debbie, we're in downtown Petaluma. We're standing in front of this wonderful old building, McNear's, 1886. There are a lot of beautiful old buildings that really show how wealthy, how prosperous this community was back in those later decades of the last century.
You're pointing to one of the gems of our iron fronts here, and obviously this is one of the best examples. And it was also constructed by a gentleman who made his money with grains that fed those chickens. Mr. McNear was a wonderful influence here in town. The egg industry obviously made his granary prosper. The building on this side of it was added on by his son in 1911. So much of our architecture harkens back to our agricultural and our poultry roots, and we're very grateful to all those gentlemen who left us these beautiful buildings and homes here in town.
Beautiful homes.
Definitely the style of architecture, everyone known it, they call it Victorian, it's really Italian and Greek Revival and Queen Anne, and we've got examples of all of them, and they're beautifully kept. It's a wonderful way to take a Sunday drive, but the buildings and those homes reflect our agricultural wealth. At one point in our early history, we were known as a cash town. There was more money per person here in Petaluma than any other northern county city.
Really? All due to the eggs, to the grains, to the
beef,
chickens,
and the dairy, yes.
the agriculture.
All to the egg, all to our earth.
No doubt about it, we were discovering that Petaluma does indeed have a rich chicken history. And to see some of that history up close, next we drove just a few miles out of town to visit an actual old chicken ranch. Well, we've had fun so far, but this is really interesting now because we've hooked up with some people who actually, your families, actually were part of that early egg industry, that early chicken industry here in Petaluma. These are the original chicken houses, aren't they?
They are.
So what kind of memories do you get when you look back and see these old chicken houses?
Well, that's where we kept the baby chicks, and it was wonderful, taking them out of the boxes, putting them under the brooder stoves, keeping them warm, and they had such a great little smell. And they were, at night we'd have to go put them under the brooder stove to keep them warm. Those were good memories. The other good memory I have is being home with the kids. I didn't have to leave the ranch. Now that was in 1946 that we bought the property.
Now your family started raising chickens though back in...
My family came in 1920.
1920, so
Right.
they were part of this early surge after the promotion to get them here. Your family came here in
1919.
1919.
Yes.
Did they know anything about raising chickens?
No, they knew nothing about raising chickens, and the reason they came is that World War I ended, and my father worked in the shipyards along with many other people, and unfortunately the war ended, and so did the jobs. And I say unfortunately, facetiously, of course.
Yeah.
And so the people who worked in the shipyards, and they were Danes and Swedes and Italians and who knows what else, came to Petaluma, many of them, to go into the poultry business, which was an easy thing to do.
Did they think they were going to get rich quick off chickens?
I don't think so, because most of these people just wanted to make a living and put some bread and potatoes on the table.
Yeah. And your family came here in
1917 is when they started the poultry business.
Now, did they know anything about chickens?
No, but their friends recommended it, that it was a successful business if you worked hard, and that's what my dad did.
So he came here from
Hiroshima, Japan.
So he literally came to this country to open up a chicken.
Well, before that, he had worked in a dairy. He's done many jobs.
Yeah.
And then he came 1901 to Sonoma County. He worked in the apple dryer and the hop field, and he picked grapes, he chopped wood. He went hungry too at times, he said.
But then he ended up with these chickens.
Yes.
And what was that like for you growing up on a chicken farm?
Well, we had to work pretty hard, though, although we had workmen all the time.
Were you gathering eggs?
Oh, twice a day. And sometimes we even helped clean the chicken house by cleaning the roost. We had to go up there. That's a preparation before they really clean the
so you
droppings.
had some dirty work to do.
Yeah, but it was fast, though. I mean, it wasn't that difficult.
Yeah.
So we didn't mind doing that.
Was it a big deal to grow up on a chicken, would you call them chicken ranches, chicken farm, chicken ranches?
Correct.
Now, was that a big deal?
I guess it was a big deal. Although when I think back, my brother and I used to have to, after school, clean eggs. That we didn't have all this automation, and we'd sit down with a little scraper.
You had to clean each
literally
individual.
clean every single egg.
You did that too?
Oh yeah, our job was never done because we gather egg twice a day. So you'll be cleaning with a wet cloth, and of course we have a lot of crack eggs too because we get tired.
Oh, so you were responsible for cracking some eggs.
But we did, and I felt very bad for my mom because her work was endless, continuous. Like we have a break going to school, and
Well,
so
those
forth.
chickens just keep on laying eggs, don't they?
Yeah, you learn which end eats and which end lays the eggs in a hurry.
Okay, we have come inside the chicken house, and does this look pretty much like you remembered it?
Yes, it does. I recognize the brooder stoves. I recognize our hoppers.
Now, wait a minute. Explain to me what a hopper is.
Hopper
Can we
is-
get over in here?
Surely. A hopper is something, this was the top, that's the lid.
Right here.
Right, and it goes on this, and the feed is put in here. And during the day, sometimes twice a day, we'd shake it, and the feed would go down into a pan, and that's the pan over there.
Oh, boy, so look, all of this original stuff is still here.
That's right.
This is amazing.
It's
Now,
still
this
here.
brings back memories, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We had many of these, and this was the starting pan. And after that, there was a pan that was a little bit larger for as the chickens grew, so that they could feed better. Because a chicken eats better when it reaches over the top rather than reaches down like that.
So you know all this too, don't you?
Oh yes,
And also,
I
in the
remember.
larger pan, you can put more feed down, so it lasts longer for the chickens.
And what would it have sounded like in here? We wouldn't have been able to hear ourselves talk, would we?
When the babies in the brooder houses, the little baby chicks, you hear little light peeps, beep, 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 beep. But when they got older, then of course it got a little louder. And you always had a pet chicken.
No.
There was one chicken that would come and pick at your shoe, and when you'd come in, you knew where it was going to come right at you.
Did you have a pet chicken?
No, not really.
Did you have a pet chicken?
Only in the pot.
Oh, gosh. That's terrible. Well, you had a pet chicken.
Yes, I did. I knew when it was going to come to greet me.
It's amazing to me that these things are still standing.
1934 is the people that we bought the ranch from. They built the houses, and we had a lot of them here, and it was about 1934.
Well, this thing, they built them to last, didn't they?
Right.
This is over 70 years old, and there are chicken houses all over out here. And Debbie, what's going to happen to them?
There is a county ordinance that says that it's against the law to tear them down. They can fall down with something that's known as demolition by neglect. In other words, you just don't do anything with them. But a lot of people find a source of pride in them, and they're shored up, but they're used for storage. I mean, they are an applicable building, and they are an asset to the property. So as you drive down, they may not have chickens in them, but they still have a useful life.
Yeah.
So you'll see them scattered throughout the county.
And you know what? When you stand here very quietly, you kind of can go back to those days, can't you?
Sure can. My mind is working right now. I'm thinking about coming in here, taking care of the baby chicks, going in the house, making lunch for the kids. I mean, it was a great life.
Well, we're ending up our adventure here in Petaluma with Steve Mart. Steve, you are one of the last remaining chicken farm families here in Petaluma, aren't you?
Yes, I am. You make me sound like I'm not shouldn't feel so good pretty soon.
Well, I mean, there used to be a lot of chicken farms here.
Right. As you look around the area, you can see, you know, in the heyday of the 50s and also the 20s, there was an awful lot of chicken ranches around here.
Your family came here from Germany in the 20s
Right.
to have a chicken ranch.
Right. Yes, it did. Then my uncle sponsored my father in the 50s, and there was another kind of little minor boom going on at that point. And then I started out of college in '83.
Now, you're one of the last.
Right. There's a couple other farms in the area, but we consider ourselves the last ones where you can actually still buy eggs from us directly, not through a cooperative or some other larger company. We're getting paid right now the same for eggs as we did in the 60s. You know,
Yeah.
what else can you get for the same price?
Yeah. So it's a tough business.
Well, it's a good business, but you got to love to do something that you do 7 days a week, right?
Yeah. Well, it's in your blood.
I guess so.
And it's part of the history of Petaluma. You're
Absolutely.
carrying on that egg, that chicken, that poultry tradition that started back in the 1870s.
Yes, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Here's a guy who represents an industry and a chapter here in Petaluma, which is very much a part of California's gold. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you'd like to see it again or share it with your family or friends, all you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.